In this video, I just want to give you a big picture understanding of how the course schedule works and really how to allocate your time effectively on a day-to-day basis. So if you're sitting here on a desktop computer watching this right now, you should notice over on the left side of your screen, there is a window that you can scroll up and down that's going to lay out the entire course schedule, right? Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. You can open up any of those. You can click on each day and see what the daily tasks and assignments for that day are going to be. If you're on a mobile device, there's a menu button. You click the menu button, it'll pop open the same window. You can scroll up and down and see your daily tasks for each day. Now, the first thing you'll probably recognize though about our course schedule that might be a little bit different is that we do break it up by day, not date, right? It's day 1, day 2, day 3, not January 1, January 2, January 3. The reason we're doing this is all about flexibility, right? We recognize that many of your personal life schedules are going to be very different, right? Many of you are working full time. Maybe you can't do as much during the weekdays. You're going to have to put more on the weekends. Some of you may be allocating all of your time full time to bar exam preparation. Some of you might have family obligations, other things going on. You might be taking a trip somewhere for a week in the middle of preparation where you're not going to be able to study, right? So the whole idea is rather than breaking it up by date where everyone's going to have different stuff going on, we break it up by day, with the idea being, again, remember from our last video, rule number 1, we want you to manage everything yourself. We want to put you in the driver's seat, right? So here's what we think is a good amount of work to do on a daily basis, but you can decide how you want to break that up exactly, right? If you want to turn what's an 8-week program into a 16-week program, right? Say you're working full time and you know you're going to have to work at it longer, right? You can do that if you understand how all the time allocations work, which we're going to talk about in a minute. If you're watching this and you're 4 weeks away from the bar exam, but you can spend 20 hours a day studying, right? Then you can speed up the program, right? And try to go 15, 16, 17, whatever you're going to try to do each day, right? And we've had students all over the board do it different ways, right? Some who are going to stretch the program out longer, some who are going to condense it, right? And all different kinds of things in between. And really it all works, right? As long as you stick to these daily time allocations we're going to talk about, you should be able to break up the schedule as you need. So what I would recommend if you really want to stay organized is you can take out a planner or a calendar of some kind and really sit in and kind of write what you want to do each day, right? You can correlate days to dates in your own personal schedule, right? And a lot of students do this. And then though, if you think that's not something you need, no, don't worry about it, right? Some students choose not to do that and they'll just say, hey, look, I'm just going to go day by day, do what it says and keep going, right? So either way, it all works. The main idea is flexibility and making the program work for your individualized needs. Now, in order to do this, it is important to kind of recognize some daily time allocations and how we break it all up, kind of what we were thinking, so you can have some ideas of how long different tasks might take, so you can break up things as you need to. Right, so when we think about it, each day we kind of break up into active review and passive review. Remember, active review meaning you're actually doing practice questions and reviewing them. Passive review referring to things like watching lectures or reading outlines or drilling flashcards, right? Anything that's not actively sitting down, doing practice questions and reviewing them, right? So what we thought when we went to the board and we're like, okay, what do we want to assign kind of as a daily amount, right? What's our daily kind of workload going to be in terms of active review? We landed on 30 MBE practice questions and 1 MEE essay a day, kind of typically. Now, some days you might have less multiple choice, more essay. Some days you might have less essay, more multiple choice, right? And then we have to deal with the performance test, so that's going to kind of work into all of this as well. But just to kind of give us a daily framework so you kind of understand what we were doing, right? This is what it looks like. 30 MBE practice questions and 1 MEE essay. Again, there's going to be variance from day to day and week to week, but this should give you kind of the big picture idea, right? So the reason we kind of went with 30 MBE practice questions and 1 ME essay is, number one, right, it seems very doable. You're probably looking at that and going, wow, that's actually not so bad. Like, I can easily handle that. 30 multiple choice questions and 1 essay a day, that's not bad at all. Like, I can do that. That's the first reason we chose these numbers, right? We, number one, wanted to make sure that our course schedule was very doable, very manageable, very straightforward, very simple, very completable, right? Because the one thing that all bar review companies will agree on, right? I'll draw you a little chart right here, and this is something that any bar review company will tell you is true. Right, if I draw this up right here, right, say that this axis, right, this y-axis is points, right, points on the bar exam. And say that this x-axis down here is percentage of the program completed, right, whatever your program is, whatever bar review course you're using. The effect is going to look like this. If you mapped out each student's score to the percentage of the program completed, what would it look like, right? If we had a scatter plot, well, you'd end up with this, right? Stuff all over the place, but generally the trend would be positively correlated, right? You'd end up with something that looks like this, where the more percentage of the program completed, the higher the points are on average, right? You get a positively correlated trend between percentage of program completed and points. Now let's say that your pass, like the amount of points that you need to pass is right here, right? So what you're going to find is a lot of the students are clumped right in here, right above and right below the pass rate. So what we want, obviously it's Studicata, if this is the case, right, we want to incentivize or make it as, straightforward as possible to move this way up the scale, right? Because the more percent of the program you complete, the higher the points typically are in any bar review course that you're using, right? So we want to get out of the way as much as possible and move everybody that way down the x-axis, because we know the more percent of the program you complete, the more amount of points that's usually going to result in. Now, the reason that it's especially important when you're thinking about course schedules to keep it simple, because a lot of time what happens is when students are, over here on the percentage completed on the bar review program, right? They enter the bar exam and they've only completed, say 25% of their bar review course. It's not because the student is lazy, right? That's typically not what's happening. If you spend thousands of dollars on a bar review course, it's maybe the most important test of your life. Most students aren't just lazy and, like, oh, I'm only going to do a quarter of the program and see what happens. What happens here is the course schedules that most bar review companies are kind of assigning are very, very difficult, very complex, very difficult to complete, right? And what you typically have going on is this phenomenon called analysis, right? Analysis. You may have heard of this, paralysis, right? And analysis paralysis is the idea that sometimes if you overthink something, what ends up happening is the more you think about something instead of actually sitting down and doing it, it can lead to inaction. So what happens with really confusing programs is inevitably something's going to come up, right? You have to take a day off. And so you get a little bit behind on your course schedule. Now you have to catch up. So what do? Well, you look at it and there's 18 different components to the program. There's so much going on, it can be kind of confusing. Well, where do I go next? How do I prioritize this? What's my plan of attack? How do I catch up? And a lot of students continue to analyze, and end up, rather than just sitting down and choosing something, picking something and going and taking action, no action is ever taken, right? The analysis leads to a type of paralysis. This overthinking ultimately leads to no action being taken. So it slows students down, right? And that's how you end up with, droves of students entering the bar exam that end up only having completed 25, 50%, 60% of their bar review program. It's usually because they experience some type of analysis paralysis. You get behind, right? You don't know how to catch up. This leads to more thinking, more analyzing, more stressing about the fact that you're behind. It's kind of this vicious circle, right? Where you're overthinking, trying to think, how do I get back? How do I get back? That causes panic and more stress. And then you get discouraged. You feel bad about yourself because you're getting behind. And rather than just sitting there and taking action to try to get ahead, all of this stress and anxiety is actually leading you to take less action, right? And that's how we end up on this side of the scale, right? On the lower end of this x-axis, which ends up resulting in less points on the bar exam. Right, so this is a horrible vicious circle that we really want to avoid. And the way you get around this from happening is by creating a course schedule that's super simple, right? Because we're trying to remove this from the equation. We don't want anyone to ever experience this type of analysis paralysis where you're wondering, what do I do next? You know, I'm a little bit behind. I don't know how to catch up. Right? Because our program, it's only got two components, right? We got active review and passive review. And it's going to be very straightforward. It's going to be something like 30 multiple choice questions a day and 1 essay a day, right? So it'll be very easy. There's no analysis, no overthinking of things, right? Hopefully. And of course, though, the bar exam's super, nuanced and convoluted. Of course, you're going to have to think about things. I'm not saying anyone can completely eliminate this, but we're doing the best we can with our course schedule, right? And saying, look, let's make this as simple and doable as possible, because we know the simpler it is, the more doable it is, the higher the chance is that you're going to move this way up the axis, right? You're going to get more, you're going to be on this end, right? And what happens when you're over here? You end up here on the trend. It leads to more points, right? The further you get this way, typically what it shows is that's going to lead to more points, which of course, remember, it's all about the points. Everything we do is about getting points. So that's why all of this, a long way of saying, this is kind of why the schedule looks the way it does. And someone might say, well, that seems too easy, right? That's not going to work. That's too easy. You got to do more and this and this and this. That's why we're doing it the way that we're doing it, right? We're trying to get rid of this stuff, make it very simple, very straightforward, so everybody is constantly getting more done, right? You're moving this way down the x-axis. You're getting more and more percentage completion each day, because that's going to keep ticking you up on possible points, right? And by the way, we know that active review is probably the most highest yielding ROI that you can spend your time on. So again, you're spending your time on a very optimum portion of your study, right? On a very high return investment on time. So all around, it's a great strategy, right? At least, of course, I would say, right? But that's the idea, right? The methodology. So breaking down the actual time allocation. So in case, again, you want to split this up and do things a little bit differently, you're working full time, you want to do a little less on the weekdays, a little bit more on the weekends, or however you're going to slice this up. Right? How did we think about the time allocations? Well, the idea here is on the MBE, right? When you go on exam day, you're going to have 3 hours to do 100 questions, right? You convert hours into seconds. 3 hours is 10,800 seconds. You divide that by 100 questions. You end up with about, on average, 108 seconds for each question, right? Some questions you might go a little bit faster, a little bit slower, but on average, you have 108 seconds per question on the bar exam. So if we assign 30 MBE questions, we know we're gonna first have you do it under bar exam conditions. So you multiply 108 seconds by 30 questions. That means 54 minutes of time should be spent on actually doing the practice questions under bar exam conditions, sitting there, reading them, completing them. So we know that's 54 minutes. And then we basically said, hey, look, on average, it might take 10 minutes, right? Not on average, but giving you maximum amount of time to review. It could take up to 10 minutes per question to review. Well, if you did 30 questions, 30 times 10, that's 300 minutes. 300 minutes plus 54 minutes is 354 minutes, which is close to 360 minutes, which would be 6 hours. So about 6 hours to do 30 MBE practice questions is what we allocated. Now, of course, it might not take you 10 minutes of active review on each question, right? On some days, you might move a little bit bit quicker. You might get through this in 5 hours, 4 hours, right? As long as you're following the rules we talked about in our last video and you fully understand why each answer choice is correct and incorrect, right, then you're good. You can keep going. So if you finish this in 4 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, whatever it is, anything short of 6 hours, that's fine. That's going to give you more time in passive review, which we'll talk about in a second. Same idea with the 1 MEE practice question essay, right? It takes 30 minutes to write the essay. We're saying 90 minutes to review that essay. Go in, try to fully wrestle with the fact pattern, understand, why each point was the way that it is, and really get that confidence to write a passing essay if you saw a similar fact pattern. 90 minutes to review the essay. So you're looking at 2 hours. That's how we kind of came to, okay, maybe maximum 8 hours a day. If you're doing 30 practice multiple choice questions and 1 essay, maybe that's 8 hours to sit there, actually complete the questions, and fully review them. And that's saying you're doing very hardcore review, right? You're ripping apart the fact patterns. We left a ton of time there to go in and really wrestle with all the fact patterns and make sure you fully understand on the multiple choice questions why every answer choice is correct and incorrect. And on the essays, you can fully use that 90 minutes to rip the essay apart, right? Fully break it down, look at the essay explanations, and really go through it until you feel confident you could write a passing essay on a similar fact pattern. All right, so that's 8 hours potentially. Again, could be a little bit less if you get through this quicker, right? Maybe it's 7 hours, maybe it's 6 hours total. But either way, right, you have at least 8 hours allocated in the schedule, right? Which for most students, on average, should be plenty of time for 30 MBE questions and 1 essay. Right, and so the rest of the day, right, however much time you have left, and if you have no time left, that's fine. You completed your minimums, right? But if you have extra time, right, that's where we then say you can go to passive review, that bonus time, right? Say you complete this in 8 hours and you're gonna spend 10, 11, 12 hours a day. Well, you could spend that last 3 or 4 hours, right, in bonus time going over the outlines, flashcards, watching lectures, right? If you finish this early, say you finish this in 4 hours and you get the essay done in 2 hours, well, now you can use all that extra time you would have had, 6 hours on passive review bonus time, right? Going over the outlines, watching lectures, right? But the beauty is, the key word on the passive review is it's bonus time. It's not required. It's there for that extra time you have. Because we know a lot of times you're going to get through this stuff a little bit quicker, right? And so all of that should then be put on passive review. And by the way, a lot of students, if you want to, another option, if you feel like you just need more passive review time, you could take a day a week, say Sundays, and turn that into a passive review day. So every Sunday, you're going to make passive review, right? So if you're looking at our schedule, it'll be like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and then you're going to say passive review Sunday, right? And then you'll just keep going, 7, 8, so on and so forth, right? So you can use whatever you want, get creative, and use that flexibility of the schedule to really do it how you want to do it, right? Really make it your own schedule based on your own individualized needs in accordance with your personal daily life, how much time you have per day available to study. And also, if you just need to change stuff, you want to add in some passive review days, or however you want to do it, right? It's all, as long as you complete all the questions that we've assigned and you're actually following all the rules we talked about in the last video with rules 5 and 6, you're actually fully reviewing them, right? As long as you're completing the questions and fully reviewing them, right? The rest we really think is bonus time. Like you're just optimizing your points. But the farthest gains you're going to get up this scale are going to come from this active review, right? So we really want to make sure you're getting that baseline. But once you're hitting that baseline, the rest is all about optimization, right? And that's bonus time with the passive review, guys. But that's ultimately how the course schedule works, how you can kind of think about it, what the daily time allocations kind of were, what you could expect. So again, however you want to break it up. And by the way, too, last note I'll make is we don't always have you sitting there just doing 30 in a row, right? You can do 5 MBE questions review, 5 review, 5 review, right? 5 you can always think a question set of 5 MBE questions is going to come out to 9 minutes, right? So you can do 9 minutes, 5 in a row, and then spend 50 minutes, right? Remember, 10 minutes per question, 50 minutes actually reviewing them. So if you want to do it like that, you can do it 1 hour, 1 hour, 1 hour, 5 question sets, right? You can do 5 in 9 minutes and then spend an hour, 50 minutes reviewing. So you're doing 1 hour per 5 questions, right? However you want to break it up, because then if you do it like that, right, you could do half on day 1, half on day 2. If you're a part-time person, right, if you're working full-time right now and you can't devote 8 hours a day to studying, right, that's how you could break it up over time, right? You could turn 1 day into 2 days, turn an 8-week program into a 16-week program or into a 12-week program, right? However you think it'll fit your individualized needs, it's all available. You can do it however you want. Again, as long as you're meeting all the baseline requirements, you're completing all the questions and you're reviewing them thoroughly, as we described in our last video, you're following all the rules, you should be good to go. And use all your extra time in passive review, attack outline, flashcards, watching lectures. Again, I think you should be good to go. But that's enough with how the course schedule works. From here, we can get into some more strategy stuff for the MEE and the MBE, and we'll do some more, by the way, we'll talk a little bit more about the course schedule in our last video in orientation. We're really talking about how to get started, you know, when we're thinking about, you know, dates and things like that and exactly the right times to get started, and a little bit more on the course schedule. So we'll tie up some loose ends there in our last video in orientation. Don't worry, we'll talk a little bit more about the course schedule. But from here, again, we'll just move into some strategy stuff so you know how to actually practice correctly with the MBE and MEE. But until then, guys, I wish you all the absolute best, and I'll see you at our next video.